Okay, this will be on Erikson's Psychosocial Developmental Stages. Erikson borrowed from Freud's psychosexual stages, but believed that the focus should be on social development, not psychosexual development. For each stage, Erikson gives us two possible outcomes. One is positive and one is negative. Erikson's first stage is called trust versus mistrust, and it goes from birth to age 1. Now, when I was growing up, I heard older folks say, don't pick up the baby when it's crying because you'll spoil it. Well, we know from neuropsych that that's absolutely not true. The infant doesn't have the mental development to be manipulative in that way. Truth is, a human infant is completely dependent on their caregivers, and they really only have one means of communicating their needs, and that's crying. Babies cry when they're hurt, when they're hungry, when they need changing, when they're scared. They don't cry just to jerk their parents around. That said, it is certainly possible to spoil children when they get a little bit older, but as infants, spoiling should not be an issue. Erikson says that infants will learn to either trust that the world is a safe place and that their needs will be met and they'll be loved and taken care of, or they'll have mistrust and feel that the world is an uncertain place. You can't depend on other people. While Freud's psychosexual developmental stages are not supported by research, there is considerable research supporting Erikson's psychosocial theory. Stage 2 for Erikson corresponds with Freud's anal stage, toddlers, and it's called autonomy versus shame and doubt. So think about a little toddler. This is the age when you have to child-proof your house. You have to fill in those wall sockets and lock up all the medicine and the poisons and stuff so that the little kid won't get into it. Children at this age are naturally curious and they want to check out everything. Erikson says good. That's exactly what they're supposed to do. They learn an incredible amount during this age if they're allowed to explore. By allowing children to make choices and gain control, parents can help children develop a sense of autonomy or independence. This is also the age when parents use that baby cage thing called the playpen. And it is understandable that parents have to get some work done and they have to be able to do certain things without interference. And it's really necessary to do those things when the baby is sleeping or on a very occasional basis use the playpen. Excessive use of the playpen and parental attitudes that children should be seen and not heard, that they should sit still and be quiet, drastically limits the child's learning at this stage, and Erikson says results in a sense of shame and doubt. Toddlers are supposed to explore, let them explore, just make sure it's safe. Erikson's third stage is initiative versus guilt. This corresponds with Freud's phallic stage, basically when children are preschoolers. I like to think of this as the look at me stage. At this age, kids are learning to do all kinds of things on their own, and they want you to see what they can do. Look at me, I can stand on one foot. Look at me, I can color. Look at me, I can tie my shoe. This is initiative, and it should be rewarded and encouraged by parents. I have observed terrible parents who degrade their children for having difficulty with tying their shoes or coloring within the lines and that kind of thing. I've even heard them call their own children stupid. These are parents who lack insight. The ability of a child to learn to tie their shoes is about equivalent to an adult learning how to type using their toes. Look at there, there's a knot. That's not a bow. Give me that. Oh, you colored all over the place. Trees are green, not purple. What's wrong with you? Parents who fail to appreciate and encourage the initiative children take at this age have children who fail to successfully feel capable and able to do things on their own. They are left with a sense of guilt, self-doubt, and a lack of initiative. Erikson's stage 4 is industry versus inferiority. This stage occurs from around age 5 to around age 11 and corresponds with Freud's latency stage. This is the first stage where the outcomes aren't completely dependent on the parents or the caregivers. It's when children enter elementary school and begin to compare themselves to other children. So the kid looks at other kids and says, oh, wow, that kid can write his name, and I don't even know all the letters in the alphabet. Industry means the desire to work and create. If a child feels inferior to other people, they feel incompetent and have poor motivation. Children with a strong sense of self-worth develop a sense of pride in their own accomplishments and their abilities and successfully achieve industry. Erikson's next stage is identity versus role confusion. It begins around puberty. So during puberty, there are all kinds of physiological changes, but also mental and emotional changes. There's a lot of brain growth, and you may remember that after going through puberty, all of a sudden you were able to think about things in different ways than you were before. You may have had deeper thoughts and more complex thoughts. If you want concrete black and white answers to questions about what's the best religion, what's the best political party, what's the best football team, what's the best place to live, ask a fifth grader. Fifth graders are concrete thinkers, and they have definite answers to all those questions. Where do they get the answers? Well, their answers are going to be a carbon copy of whatever their caregivers think, whatever their parents think. And the child doesn't think twice about it. A healthy kid, though, when they reach puberty around that age, they start realizing that the world is much more complicated than they thought before. They start recognizing that their parents make a lot of mistakes and they're wrong about a lot of things. And sometimes at this age, kids will rebel against their parents' values. Now, this is all very frustrating for the parents, and it's not a fun thing to go through, but it's also a very healthy thing for a kid to do that. Because adolescents who don't go through sort of an identity crisis when they try to figure things out for themselves go into identity foreclosure, which means they continue to operate like a fifth grader for their whole lives. This is a bad outcome because these folks tend to be associated with having characteristics like being closed-minded, being racist, homophobic, arrogant, and judgmental. They do harm in their lives. But at the end of life, the most common regret that people have is, I wish that I could have had the courage to live a life true to myself and not just fulfill other people's expectations of me. This is really unfortunate. It's sad because people going through this have a sense that they have wasted their lives. When kids go through this stage, oftentimes they rebel against their parents' values, and they do so by, instead of copying their parents, they start copying their friends. So you look around and you see adolescents all rebelling in the same way. They wear the same kind of clothes, they wear the same hair, they listen to the same music. But hopefully, a child will successfully differentiate themselves from their parents and their friends, and ultimately create a sense of values that are unique to that person. So the kid might say, well, these values that my parents have, they don't fit with me. But these other values over here that they have, I like those, and they do fit with me. I'm gonna accept those. And these values that my friends have, they don't quite fit. But these other ones that my friends have, they do fit. So ultimately, you end up with a unique individual with a unique perspective, and that is the healthy outcome. That's the development of a true individual identity. And the other side of that is role confusion, where, you might hear a 40-year-old who didn't successfully go through this stage say, I don't know who I am. Well, if you don't know who you are by the time you're 40, it's because you didn't do the work when you were supposed to be developing a true unique identity. Stage 6 for Erikson happens during young adulthood, and it's called intimacy versus isolation. Typically during this age or this part of your life, you develop an intimate relationship with somebody. Now that doesn't have to be sexually intimate, although it certainly can be. True intimacy is really about vulnerability. You find someone that you trust enough to show them your weak side and your flaws, and they feel comfortable enough with you to do the same thing. That's true intimacy. Failure at this stage is isolation, which means a poor sense of self, a lack of committed relationships. They often struggle with emotional isolation, loneliness, and depression. Stage 7 is generativity versus stagnation. Generativity, just think of the word generous. This happens at middle age. So in middle age, a lot of times folks are established in a career. A lot of times they're raising a family during this time. And they feel a sense of accomplishment. And along with that, a healthy person will also have a desire to give back. You know, I'm doing okay now, and I want to help other people do okay. So at this stage, healthy people will maybe start doing some volunteer work. Maybe they'll get involved in charities. Maybe they get involved in church work, or they help with their children's like Little League and that kind of stuff. Or stagnation. And stagnation, if you can think of Ebenezer Scrooge, he's like the classic stagnation guy. The guy is financially successful, but a complete social and emotional failure. And stage 8, the final stage, is integrity versus despair, and this happens in old age. So in old age, we approach death and have to come to terms with our own mortality, and you either, by this age, have a sense of integrity that, you know what, I have done my life right. I am happy with the choices I've made. I've lived it on my own terms. Maybe I've raised some good kids. Maybe I've written that book. Maybe I've traveled. But I've done the things that I came here to do, and I'm happy with it. Or despair. So at this age, despair is oh, why me? You know, I never got to do the things I wanted to do, and it's not fair. As you can probably tell, you can struggle with any of these stages at any time in your life, and you can actually work on them at any time in your life. So if you, let's say, have issues with trust, you can work on that. It's not too late. And if you have identity issues and you feel like you've never really established your own individual beliefs about things, it's not too late to do that. Even in stage 8, integrity versus despair, you can still turn it around. Look at Ebenezer Scrooge.